Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here and welcome to another episode of Total War Warhammer 2 Online Multiplayer Replay. Today we'll be looking at a Beastman versus Bretonnia battle, and yes, we'll be looking at a Beastman attack buff build, but my focus today will be on a slightly different unit. The Bray Scream of Wild, bringing in, of course, Mentor of Gorok to buff off the melee attack, but more importantly, Traitor-kin and Bray Scream. These two are some extremely cost-effective Beastman attack spells. You have Bray Scream doing armor-piercing damage, a very short and small area of effect, but still very devastating for how little winds of magic it costs. While for Traitor-kin, a very nice anti-cavalry spells, not only causing decent damage to cavalry units, but also lowering their speed, allowing your fast but aggressive infantry in your Beastman roster to catch them. Now, as for the rest of the army builds, we have a lot of Ungor herds, Ungor spears, and at the back, Gorok's Man Reapers surrounding a Gorbel, Butchers of Kalkengod, the Beast Lord with all his abilities fully decked out, and the Bray Shaman in the middle. In the front, we have some Centaurs with throwing axes, and at the corner, we have a couple Chaos Warhounds. As for the Bretonnian army, we have 3 mounted yeoman archers, one of them the Wardens of Montfort, a whole line of peasant mobs, some spearmen at arms, beast slayers of Bastogne, and 2 Grail Guardians, as well as a Knights of the Lion-Hearted. Grail Guardians, not the most damaging cavalry, but their holding power is just absurd. Would be interesting to see how they perform against monsters, as their high melee defense can probably fend off the slightly lower melee attack of the Beastman infantry, allowing the hammer of the Knights of Lion-Hearted and the Fey Goon Squad, Paladins, and Fey Enchantress to do some more damage. And that's basically it for army builds. Let's get the battle started. As the battle begins, the Bretonnian forces start pushing up their skirmishing forces up front, trying to outskirmish the Centaurs, and this is where the horse archers are superior to something, say, like throwing axes and throwing javelins, because they usually have a much more superior range. 125 range against the 70 on these throwing axes. That means that they can safely shoot the Centaurs from a distance, and if the Centaurs want to push up and try to counter skirmish, they can just pull back using their superior range to kite the Centaurs. So to avoid from being shot to pieces, these Centaurs will just be pulling back, especially given their lack of armor to protect themselves from non-armor piercing missiles. So instead, the mounted yeomen start shooting at something, say, more valuable, like the Butchers of Kalkengod, but thankfully they do have silver shields, so that basically absorbed a bunch of damage. In exchange, the Ungor herds and Ungor spearmen herds are just pushing forward, driving these mounted yeoman archers backwards, while these dogs are trying to escape from the corner from being surrounded and trapped. At a cost of half a unit of Warhounds, they manage to get out. And back to the front line, the Ungor herds get charged by a bunch of Paladins and the Fey Enchantress, so took some damage, and especially with all the arrows flying in, yes, they will be absorbing some damage, but that's fine, my valuable assets are still pretty much intact. And now, here comes the frontline engagement as the Knights of the Lion-Hearted tries for a cheeky frontal charge against the Ungor herds, but that's an issue of charging units these days. Even if you charge a light unit like, say, the Ungor herds, your elite cavalry still gets stuck in there. And without a clean extraction, the Butchers of Kalkengod easily followed up and dragged down 4 of these elite Knights of Bretonnia, while the Bretonnian Knights only got 2 kills in return on some lowly Ungor herds. With the Knights of Lion-Hearted on the run, the peasants can't hold the line any longer, and they're basically breaking off from the main line. Now the Beastman unit surges forward, forcing the Beast Slayers of Bastogne to rush in to plug the gap. Being Regiment of Renown, they should be able to hold a little longer. A Chalice of Potion got dropped on top of the Butchers of Kalkengod, actually killed off a model, so that's 1/12 of the regeneration off the table. But still, the Beast Slayers are just getting stomped on by all the armor-piercing melee combat in the fray, and it's just a lot of Beastmen units, Ungors, Minotaurs, Gorbel, and Beast Lord overwhelming them in numbers. As you can see, the Beast Slayers are already down to less than half health. Some Grail Guardians tries to plug the gap and charge in and do some counter charge, but they lack anti-large and their charge bonus isn't particularly high. Without enough damage output, The Bretonnian forces simply can't match the juiced up units from the Beastmen under Apocalyptic Vision and Horn of the First Beast. The Grail Guardians got bombarded by this one overcast Bray Scream, dropping their health down to below 50%, forcing them to abandon engagement even with the favor of the Fae on them juicing up their melee attack. As you can see here, they're already 10 models down despite charging in with full strength, because there's so much hit points being stripped away from that one spell. And that's why Bray Scream can be so strong against elite infantry, as it is only a very cheap spell costing 5 Winds of Magic base and 7 Winds of Magic overcast. It can do a lot of cost-effective damage and just ruining any elite unit in basically one shot. The Grail Guardians wasted the favor of the Fae as they were forced to pull back, and now they actually try to go in once again with a regrowth on top of them, topping up their HP, but it's just too much melee power from the Beastmen right here. Another Bray Scream goes down on the Mounted Yeoman Archers, taking away some hit points from them, and also there's another earlier Bray Scream we missed that also dropped onto the Mounted Yeoman Archers, stripping their HP away, hence they are rather damaged despite not being challenged in any kind of missile game. Despite all that, the Mounted Yeoman Archers are still firing into the Beastman blob, taking whatever free damage they can get. And an overview, the Beastman player is just cleaning up all the Bretonnian peasants, while the Bretonnian player realizing that the infantry fight is basically lost, so trying to just reconsolidate all his mobility to take away my mobility, chasing down the hounds, and afterwards will soon move on to these sentinels for sure, while the peasants are just rushing in, trying to just delay the Beastman units as long as possible to give some breathing room for the knights to retreat and regroup. But of course, the sentinels, knowing that they need to take out the knights, it is their duty. They goes in bloodthirsty with their throwing axes, chugging them into the Grail Guardians, stripping away valuable hit points from these elite knights of the Bretonnian. However, a really nice countercharge from the Wardens and other mounted yeomen, just pushing in, trying to catch them in melee to really pick them off, using their superior bowfire to just basically stripping the models away from the sentinels, as the slower Grail Guardians will have a hard time catching, but so they basically just charging down the separated infantry of the Beastmen. And back to the front line of the Beastmen, you can see that the peasants are just basically being pushed off the white line as they are basically routing, and all the Beastmen are just driving them into the edge of the map. And that's why you don't really want to fight on the edge of the map, especially if you're playing a faction with low leadership, because your units will be broken off and run straight for the white line despite having a bunch of HP left, and once they reach the white line they will disappear from the game forever. And if you deploy away from the white line, your troops will have a lot more space to run, just a little bit more margin for them to recover their leadership and may be able to get back and regroup before touching the white line and running off from the game. Anyways, back to the skirmishing fight, the Mounted Yeoman Archers actually taking significant damage from all the throwing axes chunked into their face, as the Sentinels can fire 360 when they run from their pursuers. These Sentinels actually came back from being chased after by some depleted Mounted Yeoman Archers, and instead turning the tables and chasing the Mounted Yeoman Archers instead. On the other hand, a couple very depleted Mounted Yeoman Archers are still desperately trying to chase after these Sentinels with throwing axes, even with Grail Guardians trying to follow up, but sadly to no avail, and they basically routing at this point, as the Sentinels are just slightly too fast. Even with poison debuffing their speed, they're just a little bit more ahead. What they could have done is probably just stay back and use their superior range to shoot down the Sentinels before they can even get close, instead of going on a wild goose chase. The Fae and the Paladin Goon Squad tries to chase down the Sentinels, but then still, not a cost-effective chase, as the Sentinels are just way too fast and the throwing axes are slowly whittling down their health. But let's do a fast forward here, as the things are getting delayed quite a bit. The Sentinels here now getting caught by a bunch of Grail units, being pushed off the map, finally shattering. The Sentinels here being chased off, and thankfully they are fast enough to keep ahead, even against something like, say, a Fae Enchantress. They should regroup once they get far enough away from enemy units. And of course, after being able to regroup, they will be throwing their axes into these expensive knights, chipping away the unit models and just getting as much value as they can. Wardens try to chase after them again, shooting some arrows, killing a model here, and my opponent wisely just throw in the Fey Enchantress instead to absorb the damage. With physical resistance and missile resistance, the Fey can actually tank out missile damage just fine. And of course, even if the throwing axes hit her, there won't be any model losses and she'll be fighting in full condition other than some HP losses, which can be conveniently healed since she is, after all, the Fey Enchantress. And in return, the Beastman is just basically consolidating the forces, resting their units, and of course allowing time and space for these butchers to regenerate, recovering the HP and pushing the balance of power against the Bretonnian army. But with both armies organized, standing face to face, now it's just a final showdown of units, as the Fey Enchantress sitting back with the rest of her knights, while the Beastmen just grouping up into a powerful melee blob, driving their forces forward to meet the Knights of Bretonnia. And the Centaurs and Dogs are hanging back, looking for a better opportunity to surround and flank the enemy forces. The Bretonnia decided to slightly back up a bit to not go for an uphill charge, retreating their Grail Guardians and Knights of the Lionhearted a bit, waiting for an opportunity to circle around and maybe hit the Beastman units from the flanks. And here comes a full frontal charge from Bretonnia, slamming straight into the Beastman unit, trying to maximize the charge damage, but with the Traitor-kin dropped right on top of them, as well as these Skorok Man Reapers, using that anti-large armor piercing damage, chipping away their health. They are taking significant damage, and also with the slow effect from the Traitor-kin, they can't get out of it conveniently, and Fey Enchantress, valiantly leading the charge, is now bogged down by all the Beastman units. The Beastman units being juiced up by Apocalyptic Vision means that they can hit this Fey Enchantress really effectively. Basically all their hits will get through, and the knights who are retreating also get their units stripped away, as the Beastman units slowly drag down all the knights with their aggressive push. And of course, the Fey is now truly isolated, with all the Beastman units surrounding her, blocking her from her escape. And with that, we have the Fey and trapped right into the middle of a Beastman blob. Chalice of Potion is attempted to be dropped in here, trying to break off the Beastman crowd. Some damage is done to the blob, of course, but it's just not enough. There are so many bodies between the Fey and the safety of the Knights. The Knights rushing in, trying to save her, but it's just not enough to break through the wall of Beastman units, especially with the Minotaurs and Gorbel himself surrounding the Fey Enchantress. She will no longer hold in this kind of combat, as she is not exactly a great melee combatant. If the Fey Enchantress stay alive, the Bretonnians are not exactly out of the game, as the Paladins are still very much healthy and can dish out pretty good damage against the Minotaurs and any Beastmen characters. But with Fey gone, the army losses is hit and not even the Paladins can hold up their leadership. The pawns of the ruinous powers shall feast on the dead today. Now let's have a look at the post-battle screen and army performances. For the Beastmen, the carry of this game is definitely the Bray Shaman, earning over 2000 value, using the damaging spells, especially the Bray Screams, to really whittle down the HP of heavy cavalry and skirmishing cavalry alike. Using that Bray Scream, the armor of the Grail Guardians got effectively penetrated and destroyed, allowing the Butchers of Kalkengard to take down their models much more easily. Of course, in the end, with the Traitor-kin debuffing their speed and whittling down the unit models of Bretonnian cavalry with that Traitor-kin damage, it basically tipped the balance of power irreversibly into the favor of the Beastmen, while the chaff of the Beastmen pushes away and basically dumps her along the front line of the Bretonnian peasant infantry. Of course, Korok's Man Reapers also earning their own worth, getting 100 kills and over 1500 value. And of course, don't forget about the Centaurs, who might not have the best time throwing axes and getting chased down by Bretonnian cavalry, but still managed to earn back most of their value, these two well over their value. As for the mobility, the Warhounds, they got pushed off early and get caught in some very unfortunate engagements, so not a lot of value from these guys. For the rest of the army, Gorbel did pretty decent, still have a lot of gas left in the tank, and still managed to earn 1345 value. while the Beast Lord mostly there to provide attack buffs, so not much can be said about him. As for the Butchers of Kalkengod, absolutely solid work, using their armor-piercing attacks to destroy the Beast Slayers, as they were supported by the Ungol herds, and then basically heal up and surround the Fey Enchantress, really butcher her and the Knights of Bretonnian down to the last man. As for the Bretonnian army, the Fey Enchantress did a lot of healing this time and also earning 1,800 value. Not as much as she cost, but still, considering that most of the time she wasn't really able to use that Mortis engine, in fact, on a lot of valuable infantry, it's still pretty impressive stuff. The Paladins were a little bit of a waste in this game, as they do not really have that many good targets to fight. Yes, they could have probably stayed and fight some Butchers of Kalkengod, but with the close support of Korok's Man Reapers, these Paladins will just get dragged down in melee combat. And in the end of the game, Fey Enchantress being destroyed and routed means that the Paladins' leadership suffered a lot before they even took too much damage, and thus hitting the army losses and breaking the army before they can even dish out enough damage to earn back their worth. For the peasant army though, peasants will be peasants after all. The yeoman archers actually not doing that much damage, as they were actually wasting a lot of time chasing after the Centaurs, putting themselves into the shooting range of the Centaurs. And one thing you don't want to do with the mounted yeoman archers or any skirmishing cavalry in general is to use them to chase after other skirmishing cavalries, because once you get into melee range, they will pull out their swords and start charging as an animation. But the problem is, for the whole time they're chasing something as fast or even faster than them, while getting peppered in the face with missiles, and since they have their sword out, they can't shoot. So it's a lot of waste of HP and missiles, as they can't do damage as they're charging while taking a lot of damage in return. And as for the rest of the infantry, the peasants with spears doesn't really do too good. Beast Slayers of Bastion did a little bit better, but still not enough to earn back their value. For the Knights of Bretonnia, they actually wasn't able to earn back their value as well, as they just got dragged down by a bunch of Minotaurs and really get blasted by those Beastmen magic. And of course, the axes thrown into the fray by the Centaurs did a great number on these Grail Guardians, as their heavy armor really mean nothing against a bunch of armor-piercing missiles. So that's basically it for today. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, as I will be regularly uploading content on tactics, strategies, wild builds, or just general battle replays on Total War Warhammer 2 online multiplayer. And if you have some replays that you like and really want to showcase because you're proud of it or whatnot, just drop by my Discord or send an email to me. I'll be sure to check it out and see if I can make it into a video. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to not miss out on any future content update. That's basically it, and thank you for watching. And I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.